hope you guys are ready for another episode of the Adventure Box Podcast. This week, we are talking about Egypt, early Egypt. So a lot of things that you hear about in history class, it's all later on. But on Tuesday, we went through all the important pre-information to find out about Egypt. All the settlements, all the settlers that came into this area, all the tribes, the cultures that settled around the Nile and lived there. We talked about the early dynastic era, basically when lower Egypt, which is the northern area, came together with the upper by Narmer, who attacked the lower kingdom and brought the two together. Oh, and we also talked about the Scorpion King, who came up before Narmer and actually started this unification process. Then we talked about the Old Kingdom. This is when all the pyramids were built. We had a snap in that I was trying to pronounce, and I can't pronounce names very well. Sorry, it's just not my superpower. Translating Egyptian, no, it's not my superpower. I have people that do that. I don't do that myself. But what we did talk about was the Old Kingdom, where the pyramids came, and then we got into a little bit of strife between them. So in this strife, it'll create the first intermediate era. And this is basically a period between the dynasties where the kingdom basically becomes decentralized and breaks apart. Don't worry, because it comes right back together. People will bring it back together later on. But today we're going to be talking about, yes, that's right, religion. It's one of the biggest things that people love to talk about and read about when it comes to Egypt. Egyptian gods, the god of Ra, or what then became Amun-Ra. There's a reason for that. Okay, so let's go into, give you a quick little map of us compared to Africa, like I usually do, and give you a little bit more. Here's the greenery, the topography. It's not topography. What you'd see from space, somewhat. And then you come down into Egypt. Now we're going to talk about today is Egypt and Kush down in Sudan. This place was also called Nubia. Okay, let's start off in Egypt. So let's talk about the gods. Okay, so the gods were very important in Egypt. It actually controlled a lot of their life. Let me just shrink that. Okay, so you had all different gods. So you had Isis. You had Sashat. You had Osiris. Now, you want to know about Osiris. Remember the picture or remember that name. We're going to come back to him. You have Horus. You have, Thoth. 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 Awesome name. I want to tell you, I can't jump too far into this. I have to take everything by points. You have Set. And you have Hathor. Okay, so remember some of those names. If you have the YouTube channel up, you'll see a picture of some of the drawings of these. There's just so much that's really interesting. Okay, but I will get to there. Okay, so they say that the image, the symbol for Ra, is the all-seeing eye. The all-seeing eye basically means that God sees everything. And so you have a carving here in stone of Ra's eyes. But this is what I wanted to bring you to. Okay. One of the big things about religion in Egypt was the idea of exaltation. Now, on Friday, I went to a presentation here at Kansas City on Egyptian history and different scrolls and the religions based around this. And this is why this part's really exciting, because I just went to a presentation on this by a anthropologist and archaeologist who travels to Egypt multiple times a year. A little less now because he's getting older. Now, interesting enough, one of our friends went over with him into Egypt at the same time of October 7th, when Israel was attacked by Hamas. Now, during that time, Everything was on lockdown. And so they found out about this lockdown, and they actually had to find a way of getting them out of Egypt. And it was around the time, actually, I think it was during the bombings right afterwards. But they had to smuggle our other friends out of Israel into Jordan. And this was done thanks to the anthropologists that we were with, or that we were listening to this presentation. So before the whole presentation started, we actually listened to him, or listened to our friends talk about him and how he was able to get our other friends out of Israel. So very exciting information. This again is why I do not go over to Egypt right now. It is not safe. I would not go to Israel, though I'd love to go to Israel right now. It's just not safe, especially for Americans, especially with terrorists out there, with terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, outside of those areas, but still around those areas. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is one of the, this is actually a script that's on papyrus that's still here today. This is an actual one. This is one that's actually kept in the British Museum. And this is, I think it's called the Aden facsimile. The Adan facsimile. So let me introduce you to Adan. Adan is a normal human. He is right here. Now, as you see, Set is holding their hand. He's guiding them through judgment. These up here are their judges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 judges in this one. It actually varies over time. There's all different judges. And if you read the inscriptions, it talks about how they believe in exaltation, which means that a person can become a son of God, to become godlike. So this is really interesting because Set comes through here, and he sits at the balances. Now the balances, this is very interesting. This right here is the symbol for your heart. And with Egyptians, they believed that the heart was the center point of character. So your character was kept in your heart. Now, this is why they weighed it. They weighed it with the characters of God, their God. So you were being balanced and seeing if you were equal with the character of God. Did not mean you were perfect. It meant that your character was in line with God. So if your character was in line with God, you'd move forward. If it was not, the devourer right here, he would eat your heart. So you wonder if you've ever seen Egyptian archaeology. They have these jars. So you learn all about them in our curriculum. But the jars would actually keep your heart and your major organs. And this is potentially for the fact of being able to have them in the life to come, or being able to be judged as well. Now again, no one exactly knows exactly what they believed. We can only get from what is written on their facsimiles. So, and they have some writing right here. Now the next one is Thoth. I think this is Thoth. Let me go back. Let me double check. Is this Thoth? Who's Thoth? Why can't I go back into my... There we go. That's why. Zoomed in. Thoth. Thoth is down here. Yes, the crooked nose right there. So jump 3 parts in. When you pass the balances and being judged, you come to Thoth. Thoth is the record keeper. He writes down your history. He writes down that you were balanced. And you have, who's this? Let's go back. Has a, well, he's either, I think it's Horus, because you have 2 similar ones in this drawing. I think it's Horus. It could have been because they changed at one point. But this would be Horus, who would present you to a veil or a barrier between you, the human, and Osiris, the god. Interesting enough, now what you see is you have male being the pharaoh, but also female, or being Osiris, and also female. This was not just a patriarchal society. This was a matriarchal and patriarchal partnership society, which we'll actually learn about later on. So with the gods, everything that was done was basically confirmed by his wife, or it would be started by his wife and confirmed by the god. It was a partnership. So this is very interesting how this all happened. And you can actually see the canoptic jars that we were talking about are right here, are sitting in this picture. And there's a lot of different things, but they talk about being exalted, being able to come before God. Okay, let's go to another one. Look at this. Different inscription, but fairly close to the same. You have Set, who is balancing your heart and the character of God. You have you as the human, or pharaoh. Oh, see. Oh, it's right. You'll always see this bird here being your spirit. So you do not have a body at this point of being judged. And so you come to this point, and that's where your character is judged, is balanced, and such. You have another one here. Let's zoom in. And here is Set and the preparation of mummification of their whoever, the pharaoh, the person that's going to be judged or going to go to the afterlife. And you have all these inscriptions, inscriptions around him. Not going to call them hieroglyphics because they're not drawn on walls or stone. And this is the preparation of his tomb underneath. And this is an obelisk basically to pronounce him. And also, what is it called? It's a tablet they marked with your history as well before you go to the afterlife. It's the preparation. Here's another drawing, again, with Horus. Horus is actually down here with the balance. There's Set, balancing the heart and the character of God. You have this one's Thoth, the record keeper. Here's the veil. Here's the devourer. So much like the other ones that were drawn. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about religion. So in this, in the curriculum, you're actually going to see how religion played into their daily lives. They were a lot more religious than we were, and not just on the gods. And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of anthropologists, historians, and archaeologists that actually believe that it wasn't about gods. Yeah, that's right. It wasn't about gods. They were all different characters of one God. So not a polytheistic, which is mean you believe in many gods, but it's not a monotheistic, because the separation of all these different characters of God. They had another name. I can't remember exactly what it was offhand, and I didn't put it in my notes. Look it in the curriculum. You're going to find out exactly what that actually is, where you actually have like one God, and all other gods or inscriptions of that person were all different characters or roles of God. This is really fascinating because each god had a purpose. Osiris was the god of the afterlife. Now, here's an interesting thing. Osiris was also, this is another part I want to talk to you about. It's in your curriculum, so you can check it there. What's also interesting is you have Osiris, god of the afterworld. Why was he the god of the afterworld? Let's go into the history or the tales or the legend of Osiris and Seth. So Seth was the brother of Osiris. Osiris was the older brother of the god. So to them, it would be either Ra or Anum, who then became Anum-Ra. So just to know, that's actually one of the points where they're talking about how all the gods are actually one. So the main god, you had Osiris, who is actually supposed to be the god, the main god, the supreme god, basically said, I need one person to rule over this world. And there's two candidates. There was Osiris, who was the older son of the supreme god, and there was the younger brother. Osiris was very wise and had wisdom, while Seth was very chaotic. And Seth had this tendency to be very chaotic in this time. And so there was a struggle between the two. So what happened? You had Osiris, who was planning to be it, and you had Seth end up basically stabbing him in the back. I don't exactly remember how he was killed in this legend. But Osiris, oh, that's what it was. No, not stabbed in the back. Theoretically, metaphorically stabbed in the back. Basically what he did is he tricked him to going into a coffin, laying down in this coffin, and then Seth sealed it up and threw it into the Nile. In the Nile, of course, Osiris dies. And he comes back resurrected. He comes back in human form and is in the afterlife. Well, when he comes back in the afterlife, he's actually confronted by the supreme god, Anum. Now, Anum says to either Osiris, well, said to Osiris and also Seth, he curses Seth. And Osiris, he says, you will be the god of this world. And you will also be able to rule the afterlife. You will help me with all the people as they come over from the world into the afterlife. And so this is the part where you're basically being judged and coming before Osiris. That's why these facsimiles are just so amazing. And that's actually what we were listening to the presentation of, is these facsimiles. Now, interesting enough, each of these conific jars, canopic jars were all different parts of your body would actually be held. One would hold your heart. One would hold something else. And before you're mummified, all these main organs were taken out and presented in these jars, which had different heads and different responses or reasons for each head. So very fascinating how this all works. Now, that's the religion part. Now I want to go into Kush and Nubia. And the reason why I want to go into Nubia is because it's a trade partner with Egypt, but Egypt wants to take it over. It wants to conquer Nubia. So I'm going to come back to this. This is out of order. So you have basically in here, Kemet is early Egypt, but Egypt, and also the religion. The Egyptian religion was close to that. It's not actually Kemet. But then you have Kush. This is basically Nubia. Nubia is this very large area where if you look, remember this river, what is that? That is the Nile coming down into this lake down here, all throughout the Sudan and Kush area. Now, it's not actually a civilization until well after, into like the 1600 BC to about 1000 BC, somewhere around there. But what's important to know is that these were still societies that grew, and we're going to go over the actual kingdom of Kush later on, because when we get to that point. But you need to know about the partners. This was, again, very lush area. As you know, Sahara Desert is in northern Africa. As you come down the Nile, it's not just the Nile area that's lush and green and great for agriculture, but the lower areas as well. And they're trading with them for generations. Now, here's something interesting. Look at this. If you're watching the YouTube channel, look at this. What is this? This is a pyramid, but this is in Kush. This is not in Egypt. Now, could this actually be the Egyptians when they conquered Kush? Because they will in the future. Did they develop this? Yeah, it could be. It could be. But this is actually all throughout. This is not just one. So this is Kush, and there's Egyptian Kush. That's because it took it over, and this is basically explaining Kush and Egyptian Kush. But again, we're not going to go to that part yet. We're not even going to go to the conquering part. I'm just giving you a little introduction into Kush. These are the types of hieroglyphics that you find in Kush. Interesting enough, yes, they are Egyptian-like, but not all Egyptian. I find it very interesting. You have in this a person and a child or some sort of subordinate person. So some person that's a slave or such, but drawing it small. And then what's in his hand? You don't know because it's well above. In this one, you see a reed. So it could actually have been a whip and putting people into slavery and such. One is actually carrying a person, or at least looks like a person. I just thought that was very interesting. Okay, but these are the Kush hieroglyphics. But interesting enough, again, not 100% sure when they are, when they were developed. But this is a Nubian prince, which we're going to go over later on, when the Nubians when the Kush take over. Now, Nubia has a lot of different cultures in it. Kush is just one of the main cultures that you're going to find more information about as we go on. But the introduction to Kush is actually in the curriculum. So read about it. There's a lot of information here. I mean, this is just more images of pyramids in Kush. Again, could have been built by Egyptians. Yes, it could have been. But Kush being a neighbor, seeing that they're building pyramids, like, ooh, I like that structure. I'm going to build some too. We do it all the time these days. We take architectural ideas from other cultures and other people. So this is all ways of doing it. Okay, so one of my main fascinations with Egypt is the fact that we don't know as much as we think we know. So there is a time, we're going to talk about it, where they went from the polytheistic, or at least what we think is polytheistic, into monotheistic, complete monotheistic, where they have a sun god. Now, they always say, and this is why I'm going to bring this up, they always say that in this period, when they went to monotheistic, that they worshipped a sun disk. But the problem is that, yes, they had a sun disk, which represented what? A god. It wasn't a disk that they worshipped. It was most likely, or maybe it was. Maybe it was an idol. I don't know. But again, when it comes to learning about ancient civilizations, we would love to say we know everything about them. The fact is that we barely know anything about them. All we know is what they wrote down. Now, the problem with them writing down, as we saw from the Aztecs, as we saw from the African history, every time a new leader comes in, they destroy what records they can get their hands on. They repaint the hieroglyphics that are on the temples and such. And because they can do this, they can change history. And because they can change history, they control the people. If someone tells you that history is not important, point to them towards Egypt. Point to them towards the Aztecs. When we can't understand the history, the person that's in control controls us. If we understand history and the fallibility, the issues that have come up, the successes that came up, we can learn from the past and not repeat it. If the person is in control and trying to destroy history, trying to make it so that we focus on other things than history, then that's an issue. And so we need to actually talk about history and the importance of it. Now, going into olden times, we can only go by what was written that we have. So ancient Egypt could be completely different than we do. But here's the fact. The fact is that we don't have the facts. And the fact is that we only have part of the evidence that we need to create fact. So everything we have is still theory. But it is the best we have with what we've been given. So we take what we have, we make it a history, we present it to you so you can share it with others, so you can learn from the past. But the truth is, we don't know exactly what happened because none of us were there. If we're going to talk about civil rights, people are still alive from the civil rights, and we have the history. The Roaring Twenties, we have some people from there, some people that are over 100 years old. Beyond that, we can't exactly tell you exactly how everything happened. We can tell you the best possibility of what happened depending on perspectives. Go further back, 1,000 years ago and before, you're not just going by perspectives, you're going by perspectives and whatever is written on that. and whatever you can translate on that, which is why learning about Egypt is a complete mystery. Learning about Africa, complete mystery. And we are just starting to, you know how an iceberg? You see an iceberg in the water. You see this little peak right here, but you don't see everything else that's underneath the water. We are just diving in. That's why archaeologists are constantly working in Egypt. That's why archaeologists and anthropologists and historians are all working together to create a best case scenario of what we can tell you of history, because that's all we got. And that's all I have for today. I don't want to keep on going about this, but that's something really important to know about Egyptian history, is we don't know everything. When the historians, the archaeologists, the anthropologists come together and say, this is how they believed and that's it. Well, if anyone ever tells you that they know exactly what happened in ancient Egypt, walk away. That is definitely not a person that knows what they're talking about, because ancient history was not set and clear, because people didn't write it down. If they did write it down, they wrote it down after hearing it a long time. Next month, we're going to be talking about the Hebrews. The Bible was not written down right away. As Adam was going through the Garden of Eden, while Noah and such, it wasn't really written down until, it was written down over time in different journals. But the Bible, when the first 5 scrolls, the Torah for the Jews, was written, it's basically the time when it was actually written. We're going to go through all of that. When it started, when it was written, and when we actually have historical, accurate evidence beyond just the writing of the Bible. Now, the Bible we have as an indicator. No one should ever tell you it's written in the Bible, so it's not true. No one should ever write or say that. If they do, they have to disregard everything in history. Because when you're talking about the Bible, it's written down history. They still have the ancient scrolls, that some that are still around today. They have the Dead Sea Scrolls that just were found that matched up with the other scrolls. Okay, so you have all that. If you were to deny what was written in the Bible, or deny what was written in those scrolls, then you have to deny everything that was written in the papyrus for Egypt, or on the prehistoric rock paintings, because that is someone's perspective, that is someone's history, that is someone's, but what they saw to be true. All we know is what they have presented to us and what we can find from archaeology. So if they say that, if someone says you can't rely on the Bible to rely on the history, to know the history, okay. Now, outside of belief, if you're not a Christian, if you are outside of any religion, then yes, take those as with a grain of salt, they say. Don't rely on everything that's there, but don't disregard the main parts that are there. So you need to be able to understand. The reason why I say this is, let's go to Muslim. Muslims did not write it down right away. It wasn't 300 years before they wrote it down, but it was a few generations. They actually had people, we're actually going to talk about this, it's in the curriculum. But one of the reasons why the Quran was actually written down was because those that had memorized it from the Prophet Muhammad were actually dying in battle. They were sending them out to war, and before they could write them down, they were killed, which is why they started writing it down. It was an oral history of the Quran. You'd have to disregard everything that's in the Quran if you were to disregard everything that was in the Bible, or disregard everything that's inscribed. We do the best what we can as anthropologists, as historians, as archaeologists with what we're given. But we have to take everything into account. So I said I was going to end it before. Now I'm really going to end it. This is the end of this episode of the Adventure Box podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot of information out of this. Stay tuned for next week. There's some really good stuff coming up, including, I'm going to look at my schedule here. We have the Middle Kingdom. It's the reunification of Egypt, as I said, after the intermediate period, the first one. You have the Hyksos. Very fascinating, because these were outsiders from Canaan. Now, this is also overlaps the time of the Hebrews being in Egypt. and we're going to talk about that. Egyptian expansion into Nubia. Again, we talked about Nubia and Kush. Now we're going to talk about the expansion into it. And the last one is the start of the new kingdom. There's a lot of different kingdoms. Again, broken up by intermediate times, intermediate periods. And this is the second intermediate period as well, is in here. So the third one I'm very fascinated with, because this is the time of, I'm not going to go into it. Stick around. You're going to hear more. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Take care. Have a great day. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.